Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Soul Ecosystem Podcast. I am your host, Anna Rising, and in the Soul Ecosystem, we talk about everything related to soul contracts, the soul journey, past lives, subconscious programs, and the like. In this episode in particular, we are looking at the soul contracts of murderers, well-known serial killers, and other people that have committed kind of very heinous things throughout their life, just to get an insight into what their soul agreed to experience in this lifetime and where it kind of went wrong. I believe that people, when they incarnate, they are given these opportunities to clear their karma, to clear the karma that they've compiled, and learn the lessons and take something positive out of something that would have otherwise been negative. And some people don't do that. Some people choose to manifest in the negative. They choose the shadow side. They don't do the inner work. And then that starts to manifest a lot of different things in their life, as we will come to see in these soul contracts. Now, going into this, I was like, I know that there's not going to be like a specific, this person has the propensity for murder. This person is going to be a murderer in their soul contracts. So I was really interested to see what kind of programs they would have, because some programs, I feel like I felt like they have this ability to go darker, to eventually get to that level, because there's some programs like avarice that talk about people having very high highs and very low lows, and being a person of extremes. So I was like, I can easily see how when a person gets extremely low, extremely depressed, or extremely like agitated, I can see how that would play into them committing something like murder. So when I started looking into Ted Bundy's chart, into Jeffrey Dahmer's chart, into people like Charles Manson, I was really surprised, because specifically the people that have committed multiple murders, their soul contracts are very, very different than normal people. I'm not saying that they have they don't have programs that everybody has. Like, there are certain programs that kind of pop up a lot for everyone, but there was new programs for sure that I've never seen before, and it was very, very interesting for me to delve into these new past lives and see how they influenced the person's present life, how they influenced the choices they made in the present life. So there was one past life in particular that I never saw before, and I believe it was Edmund Kemper's. Edmund Kemper's chart had a new past life I haven't seen before. So this is not one that pops up often. This is the first time I'm seeing it. So I feel like it's really rare. And as soon as I saw it, I feel like I got a better insight into what triggered him into doing what he did. And I think specifically Edmund Kemper did something incredibly atrocious to his mom, and the past life kind of shed light into what was going on there. So I would love to touch on that. Out of all of the serial killers, I think I am most familiar with Ted Bundy the most. I seen a couple of documentaries about him. I also seen the movie that where Zac Efron was playing Ted Bundy, and I'm not sure how like accurate it is in regards to representing Ted Bundy, but it was a really, really good one. I remember after having watched it, I was really upset with the ending, because I'm like, I really hate this. Like, they left this air of like, how could somebody like that do it? Like, they made it seem like he was so normal, and they really didn't show that insidiousness behind the person that was Ted Bundy. So I was initially very upset, but then after I thought about it, I'm like, that is such a great depiction of what this person was, because they really showcased the separation that was happening between the Ted Bundy that was this father who took in a child that was not his own, and this loving, I don't know if he was a husband, but he was in a relationship with somebody. They really showcased that separation, that there was something just completely animal on the other side of it, and it was all over his soul contract. Oh my god. The entire time I was reading these, I was just like in total shock, because it calls out everything. And I'm gonna get into it so you guys can see for yourselves, because it's freaking wild. So Ted Bundy was born November 24th, 1946, and his past life was one of slavery. This is a pretty common past life. I see a lot of clients with this past life. It's one either where you were a slave, or one of like a lifetime where you were severely, severely limited or constrained. Like you didn't have a lot of options. You didn't have a lot of freedom to choose who you wanted to be, to choose which direction you wanted to go in. And that could not just apply to slavery, it could apply to being a woman that was like forced into an arranged marriage, and you have no say in that, and you have no control, and you kind of have to become the wife and do all of the wifey things. So something along those lines. But I feel like Ted Bundy's past life was especially dark. If he was a slave in a past life, I feel like he was very, very severely abused, because his abuse, I feel like, started off very, very young. Like when the kind of stuff that his neighbors and his childhood, like people that knew him from childhood, would say about him is just way dark. It also sheds a little bit of light into what his family home life was like. His soul contract touches on that too. But we'll get into that a little bit later. So his past life was one of slavery, or where he was severely limited into having a choice, into being able to live the life that he wanted. He was severely, severely limited. And he has some 6s and 11s in his chart. 11 because he was born in November, and 6 because 24, the two numbers added up, is going to be 6. So I chose to kind of read all of the shadow aspects of his chart, because I feel like this person was really heavily operating from the shadow. And while I could talk about the potential that he had, the potential Ted Bundy had, I feel like there's so much else to cover in his chart and everybody else's chart that I'm not going to really touch on it. So it's just going to be like purely what was triggering this guy. So for the 6, when operating from the shadow, the number 6 makes people severely dependent on others' opinions. So these are people that are going to be showboating a lot. These are people that are very, very people pleasing, and they try to make this air about them, that they're like successful, that they have it all together, they have the perfect life, white picket fence, all the things. The shadow side of the number 11 is using power to the detriment of others, behaving aggressively. So that is checking out fairly quickly right off the bat for Ted Bundy. He also has some traits of having very high highs and very low lows. So he's kind of, I wonder if he ever got a chance to get diagnosed, if he would be diagnosed bipolar, because this is what it's sounding like. But he has very intense and painful emotions. So when he's happy, he's almost euphoric. And when he's sad or angry, it's like the most angry and the most sad you can be. So very, very intense. He has a lot of interesting subconscious programs running. the most interesting, I would say, is the beauty program. So I think it's especially interesting that he has the beauty program because I remember how many, like seeing little clips of all of the women that came to his aid, like took his side when Ted Bundy was on trial. All of the women that would be standing outside the courthouse and saying that he's innocent and to let him go. He didn't do anything. It was absolutely wild. And I think it's because he had this beauty program. Now, the beauty program usually manifests like you're spiritually beautiful or you're physically beautiful. And I think for Ted Bundy in particular, it was manifesting as physical beauty because spiritually, this guy was pretty low, pretty on the negative side. I think that's safe to say. So when I saw that he had the beauty program, I'm like, I think that makes so much sense why women were just flocking to him. Like he put on this such trusting persona, such a charismatic persona, I think. And I don't know, he had this term about him. It's all on the documentaries and everything that he had this unexplainable charm about him. And it would just, ladies would fawn over him, essentially. So moving on, he has the Mother Wound program. So the Mother Wound program is a program that comes up a lot. The Mother Wound program is specifically related to a distrust in women stemming from childhood, stemming from issues that they had with their mother. And I did not know this about Ted Bundy until I Wikipedia'd him. But he did not know that his mother was his mother until later on. I think when he was a teenager or in his young adult years, he was brought up by his grandparents, and his grandparents always told him that they were his parents and that his mother was actually his older sister. And Ted Bundy has told different people different stories about how he found out that he was actually his sister's son. But essentially he didn't find out until he was older. So he developed a lot of resentment against his mother for not telling him who his parents were and for robbing him of the opportunity to find out his paternity, find out who his dad is. So that was, again, on par, like straight on the nose. And continuing down the subconscious programs, there was a new program in here that I have never come across, but I'm like, I'm going to be flagging this program from now on because I feel like it's a genius program. I feel like you have to be another level of genius in order to pull something like this off. This program is called Confidentiality Program. And essentially it's saying that this person would make a really great FBI agent because he's excellent at separating his work life from his personal life. And in regards to Ted Bundy, I think you could easily see that his work life, quote unquote, is the person he is at work and the person he is at home. He still maintains this mask. He still maintains this persona. And then the person he is that's on the inside, the personal part of himself, is the one that's committing all of these atrocities. So I'd say that it is 100% spot on that he separates his work life from his personal life, because nobody would have ever guessed who he is on the inside, even up till like the end, up till he was sentenced. I'm sure everybody was like, I don't even know if he did it. We don't know for 100% sure if he did it or not. So that was really interesting. Something else that his soul contract talked about is this lack of masculinity. There's almost this inability to process what a man is supposed to act like. And on the Wikipedia, it talks a little bit about how his grandfather was in his childhood, how he acted. Some people say it's not necessarily true, but other people say that he was a raging alcoholic and very, very abusive. That he pushed his wife down the stairs one time because she overslept or something like that. I don't know how much truth there is to that, but I feel like he had a very, very complex upbringing that may have really messed with his development, especially in regards to thinking that his grandparents were his parents and then his mom was his sister, and then realizing that all of that's not true. I feel like it could have caused a psychotic break in somebody, but he was disturbed way before that. I think he was doing things like terrorizing kids in his neighborhood and doing stuff to animals way early on. I don't want to get into the details of it. I just want to look into their chart, and then you guys can look into the details and see how much of this is panning out. There's also this program that I'm very, very hesitant about because it's essentially kind of almost outing somebody, because they're saying that there's this propensity to look up to the same sex or be in love with the same sex, like be attracted to the same sex. And I've looked into a couple of contracts of people that are homosexual, and it wasn't popping up in their program. So I'm not sure how I feel about it, but I want to mention it either way because of his constant attempt of being masculine, of doing masculine things. It felt like he didn't really have this masculine role in his life that showcased a healthy masculine energy. So I feel like for one reason or another, he really latched on to this idea that you can't trust women. Women are liars. Women are horrible. And I think there was this internal hatred that started for him towards women that escalated into what it escalated into. And it was probably stemming from his mom's betrayal, his mom not telling him who his dad was, who his real parents were, not admitting that she was his mom. That was really messed up. He also has a rejection program, a rejection of societal rules and laws. This is a person that's they likely get out, almost cheat the system, get out of things where they feel that they can get out of. Like if they can get out of a speeding ticket in some way, like taking off their plates or something, or doing something else that's illegal, but they don't want to get fined for it. This is a person like that. It's a person that doesn't feel that they should conform to these laws that are set out. They feel like they're the exception, like they don't need to pay attention or listen to them. He also had a baby trap program. So there's this program called the Child Manipulation Program that manifests as a baby trap. So this person, although I'm pretty sure he didn't have kids, but I think he was with someone who already had a child from a previous relationship, and he kind of took them in, and he became this father figure to this child. I think in that relationship, he was keeping her there. He was keeping her in that relationship specifically through the child. He's like, I'm this father figure. I'm all this child knows as a father. And I feel like there was some manipulation there in order to get this woman to stay in that relationship. Funnily enough, he also has this program where there's a potential for a platonic relationship, because Ted Bundy was a person of ideals. He was very, very big on idealism and having everything look perfect, almost in an obsessive compulsive way. So he idolized this lady that he was in a relationship with, and there was this chance that it turned into a platonic relationship because he viewed her as the epitome of a woman. He probably saw her as the only woman that wouldn't lie to him, the only woman that wouldn't betray him. So when you start looking into Ted Bundy's karmic lineage, what was coming off from his paternal side and what was coming off of his maternal side, it was spot on again, because from his maternal side, it was talking about his mom being overly critical, overly aggressive. And if she grew up with the version of the grandfather or her father that Ted Bundy grew up with, the raging alcoholic, like he had obvious anger issues. I think there was also mention of him talking to himself a lot, like, or him hearing voices or something like that. So she was manifesting extreme aggression towards him, and it was kind of this thing where nothing he did would be right. He wouldn't be doing it the right way. So there was a lot of demands. There was also in his mother's karma, in the maternal karma, there was problems with paternity. So I just like, I blocked that out. I'm like, I don't think that means anything. And then I looked on Wikipedia, and it said that there's a question of his paternity. On his birth certificate, it mentions somebody, but it was never official that that person was his actual father. It's like they didn't know. So that was very interesting, to say the least. So for his maternal lineage karma, there's some very, very heavy karma to clear, like one of not being able to provide for your family, not being able to have a roof over your head all the time, really, really unexpected losses of large amounts of money. And from his mom's side specifically, it talks about how her life is characterized but by the repetition of negative situations that already existed in the family. So this cycle of negative karma that was manifesting throughout their family. And it said that a harsh fate was very likely. So that kind of touched on Ted Bundy's chart. I feel like the things that stood out most to me was the confidentiality program, the program that was talking about how he was excellent at keeping his work life and his personal life separate. I feel like because nobody knew what he was doing on his personal time, it checks out 100%. I think it's also interesting that he has a beauty program because of the immense support that he had. All of these women coming out of the woodwork that just thought that he was attractive and therefore innocent when he was on trial. And the problem with masculinity, they felt like he was trying to put on this show of being the perfect masculine man. And maybe there was a bit of attraction there to the same gender because of that, because he idolized that so much, and he was a person of ideals. Maybe that was only escalated by his mother's betrayal and his distrust towards females, that he started to kind of have that. Maybe he always had that, but I'm sure the thing with the mom didn't help. Next up on our list is Jeffrey Dahmer. So Jeffrey Dahmer was born May 21st, 1960. And his past life is one about taking away someone's choice. So in his past life, he loved somebody so passionately or so much, and it went unrequited. So they decided to take control in some form or fashion and try to win them over or try to get their love somehow. In some cases, it's through black magic, where you try to do a love potion of sorts to make somebody fall in love with you. In other cases, I think this can be interpreted as literally taking away somebody's control, literally taking away somebody's choice and forcing yourself onto them, trying to knock them up and maybe not earning, but like getting them to be with you in that way. And I wouldn't normally come to that conclusion. I'm only coming to that conclusion because this is Jeffrey Dahmer. You're not automatically going to go to the most extreme case, but I feel like the serial killers and murderers are the perfect time to do that because they have a tendency of manifesting everything in their chart in the extreme and in the shadow side. So for Jeffrey Dahmer, he has some programs saying that he would be an excellent actor. He's very good at acting, impersonating, putting on a role, which seems like a common theme amongst people that are manipulative like that. He also has a program of tyrannical behavior, shocker, and a program of collusion. So he has this ability to get people to gang up on each other or gang up toward like on one particular person, have them go against them. He also has the program of avarice, which is essentially why I had this idea for looking into serial killers, because I feel like the program avarice, that's one of those programs that has a shadow side that could be especially dangerous. When I read that program for the first time, I'm like, okay, this could get really bad. And I could see it leading to a person manipulating someone or taking their choice away in some form or fashion. So I found it interesting that Jeffrey Dahmer had this program. I feel like there's a possibility that it's narcissism program. It's definitely one of the programs that I flagged for having narcissistic traits. I feel like I'll eventually do an episode of programs that I find that can lead to narcissism or like give a person a potential trajectory to go in that direction. Because essentially we all have shadow sides. And even though we have these programs, if you find any of these programs in your chart, it by no means means that you are going to be able to go in this trajectory that these people have chosen, like take it that far, take it to that nth degree, take it to that extreme. It just gives you a little insight into where this person took it, like into the why. So avarice is one of those programs where the person has very high highs, very high lows, a person of extremes, and bad things don't happen or remotely bad things happen. It's like the worst thing possible. And if it's a good thing, it's the best thing possible. So a person of extremes. The next program that is in Jeffrey Dahmer's chart is academic knowledge. So this is a person that's very, very educated, very smart. He has the potential to be a genius, the potential to really be academically knowledgeable. And then we have the beauty program. As soon as I saw that Jeffrey Dahmer also has the beauty program, I'm like, what is going on with these serial killers and having the beauty program? Because I know that it's not spiritual beauty. It says it's physical beauty, and maybe it's leaning more towards them having this charm about them, this unexplainable charm that makes people trust them, makes people kind of let their guard down around them. And I posted on my Instagram, I'm like, girls, we gotta do something. Like, does this mean we need to stay away from the pretty boys, stay away from the guys that have this unexplainable charm to them that kind of makes you take your guard down? Also in Jeffrey Dahmer's chart is the violation of hierarchy chart. So this is a person that's very, very obsessed, or it's very important to him that there's a hierarchy and that it is followed. So if there is someone above him, it's important for him to listen to the person above him and follow the rules of the person above him. And when the hierarchy is broken, it kind of really bothers the person. So I can assume that this can mean that maybe that was happening to him in his in his childhood where the person that was the head of the hierarchy, the father, that wasn't happening, and maybe that triggered him a lot and led to some very questionable choices. Jeffrey Dahmer also has the prison program. I've seen the prison program come up a lot. For women, I've seen that it manifests more of an internal prison, like a mental prison instead of a physical prison. In Jeffrey Dahmer's case, this is an actual prison sentence. Like the program talks about, this could be the situation where you feel like you can't get out of and you feel stuck in, or it could be an actual prison sentence. And I've seen that for the women, it doesn't necessarily mean an actual prison sentence. Jeffrey Dahmer also has the Fairy World / director writer program. So he would have made a great writer. He's probably very good with words and just an intellectual, it sounds like, by the look of his chart. So for Jeffrey Dahmer's chart, in regards to his paternal lineage, there is some karma there, a lot of negative karma, a lot of negative manifestations happening there. From the paternal side, there's specifically a dependence on various kinds of vices, alcohol, drugs, that kind of stuff. It also talks about the lack of masculine energy from his dad's side again. And I think that there's a commonality there. There's something going on there where there's this problem with masculinity or healthy masculinity that is triggering these kind of really aggressive. I mean, now that I'm saying it, I feel like that's very, very obvious. When there's no healthy masculinity in the family, the men usually resort to having aggressive tendencies. It also talks in his chart about him having a very tough life. And actually, there was somebody else I know that has that specific trait in their chart. It's based off of the number 10 in the shadow side in their chart. And it essentially means that after a certain point in your life, after like young adulthood, it's just constant negativity being thrown in your face. So from the maternal lineage, there's nothing too serious except this trait where a person is overwhelmed by various passions, from promiscuity in relationships to really serious addictions. So it's interesting that his mom also has this propensity for addiction. This person also, well, from the mother's side, there's also this tendency to show jealousy, start scandals, like behave physically aggressively. And on his mother's side, there's this massive fear of losing a partner. And oftentimes the reason they choose their partner is very superficial. And therefore, like, they have this fear of losing a partner somewhere along the way because there's nothing backing a relationship. There's no deeper connection there. I'm considerably less familiar with Jeffrey Dahmer's story and his childhood than with Ted Bundy's. I tried to watch the Jeffrey Dahmer. I think it was a series, and I couldn't. I think I only watched an episode or two, and then I gave up. I couldn't handle it. It was really, really grotesque. It was hard to stomach, so I can't imagine the level of disturbedness that somebody has to have in order to do the kind of things that this guy was doing. But it's very interesting that his chart kind of talks about his mother constantly needing attention and like being afraid that the relationship is going to break up because of the superficiality of it. Because on Jeffrey Dahmer's wiki page, it talks about his childhood being very, very neglected. It talks about how his parents were very much focused on the problems of their relationship and not on the children. And his mother was severely depressed and at one point attempted suicide. So there's a lot of things going on there. And you could see it on Jeffrey Dahmer's chart based on his maternal karma, the karma from his maternal lineage. Now, I talked about doing the Menendez brothers before on my Instagram. I was interested to take a look into their charts because they also committed a murder. Murdering your parents is kind of a big deal. It's not necessarily, sorry, I don't know why I'm losing my voice right now. They weren't serial killers, but I wanted to take a look at their soul contract. And once I did, I'm like, okay, serial killers contracts and contracts of people that were just murderers that maybe murdered once or twice. I feel like I'm desensitizing these murders, like I'm making them appear not as bad as they were, and that is not at all my intention. But their soul contracts looked much, much different. They had some very high vibrational programs, and I'm like, oh my God, what is going on here? Why do their soul contracts look so different? And if you guys do end up seeing the series, it's a good one to watch for sure. It's pretty heavy, but it's a good one to watch because it kind of does the same thing that Ted Bundy's movie kind of did with Zac Efron, because it starts off portraying the brothers as just being these very like spoiled rich kids that are just out to have fun, and then it starts touching on some like deeper stuff. So at first you end up like hating them and you're like, oh my God, they killed their parents for no reason. And then it's like, wait a minute. So I took a look at their chart, and Joseph Menendez is the older brother. Joseph Lyle Menendez. He goes by Lyle Menendez. And Lyle Menendez was born January 10th, 1968. He has the High Spiritual Unification Mission. And this program is a high vibrational program. It's meant to bring people together. It's meant to unite others towards a common cause. And I am very, very curious as to what common cause he united people to. I feel like he was karmically destined to get to the place that he was in order to probably unite people in jail, maybe. That's a theory. I'm not sure about it. He also has a program of self-destruction, a program of binge, and a program of revenge. So I thought it was on par with what I saw in the series, as Lyle was kind of the guy that initiated the murders. He was the one whose idea it was. He's the one that kind of snapped, and his little brother, it seems like his little brother just played along. So in regards to programs, Lyle Menendez has very basic programs, I want to say. Like, they're not incredibly rare or incredibly difficult. These are programs that I see in soul contracts all the time. In regards to his little brother, though, he has the prison program. So he literally has a program where he is going to be sent to prison at some point, which I found very interesting. I don't know why his little brother has that program, but he doesn't. He also has the High Spiritual Unification Mission. So I feel like it's very, very karmic that they ended up where they ended up. It was very intentional. I feel they chose to live this incarnation out the way that they did to end up where they did. And maybe that's why it caught so much attention from the media. It's still being talked about today. It's absolutely crazy how widespread their story became. And I think it needed to become as widespread as it did because there's clearly some lessons that they are teaching others. The next soul contract that we're going to touch on is Edmund Kemper's, which is one where I saw a new past life. It was a past life of almost like this religious zealousy, this almost really religious person. I don't know if Edmund Kemper was actually religious, but this is a person that got really, really stuck on their values. If they believed something to be true, it was that people had a hard time convincing them otherwise. It's interesting to me also that in this past life, it talks about him using faith as a weapon, or using this idea or ideal as a weapon in order to kind of control other people. And my fiance told me that Edmund Kemper used to walk around with his father's bayonet a lot as a child or something, which I was like, okay, like this is a person that's literally, they feel like they are meant to be this, not spokesperson, but kind of lay down the right way of doing things. They feel that they can act as belligerently. It literally says in his chart that they often act belligerently. And if they think they're doing it for the good of others, then it makes it all okay because they think they're doing it for their good, and other people just don't understand it. They don't understand their tactics, they don't understand their choices because they just don't get it. So there's this lesson for him here that he needs to remember that you can't force somebody to do stuff, no matter how good your intentions are. Good actions cannot be imposed by force. So Edmund Kemper's chart talks about how in this life, this person is the bearer of a super specific idea, trying to force others to accept their faith in this very important thing and take their side. It specifically says this person does not know how to stop. They don't know the parameters, like the limits that you are not allowed to cross in order to impose your idea. In regards to Edmund's programs, he has a program I've never come across called the hostage program, which is very, very heavy. It specifically, like word for word, says that when operating from the shadow side, he's involved in abusive, very toxic relationships. And that is apparent in his relationship with his mom. His mom was absolutely horrible to him. And that is definitely, I think, where the hostage program is coming from. He's also got the divorce program, which means that he's a child of divorce or he will get divorced eventually. And his mom and dad did separate when he was fairly young. He also has the prison program. So it was very karmic that he was going to go to prison. He really had to learn that. He needed to experience that. And I think that's stemming from his inability to really realize that you can't make somebody do what you want them to do. You can't control somebody and force them to think the way that you want them to think or believe what you want them to believe. I feel like the only way around that for him was to go to prison. But going back to his chart, he has the hostage program, divorce program, prison program. All of these are the ones that stand out to me the most. All of these are the ones that have the most extreme shadow sides, the most extreme negative manifestations. He also, so I'm not listing all of the programs, but he also has a program called expulsion from the system. So that's somebody that feels very out of depth in their reality, in their waking world. They feel like they don't belong, like they don't belong in society. They're just really different. And it's curious to me as to how he made himself seem so normal to psychiatrists, to people that have studied him. Where his trigger is, or where the disconnect is in regards to the principles he believes in. He seems to have his own set of rules in regards to what can and can't be done. I feel like that is where he's letting the murders slide and making it be like, oh, they're not that bad. Like, everybody should murder once in a while. I don't know. That's just how it's showing up in his chart. That's all I really have to say on Edmund Kemper's soul contract. It's strange. It's a little bit strange, and I feel like there's missing pieces to his story, because based on what his soul contract is saying, there's some things that I'm having a hard time connecting. But we're going to move on to Rodney Alkalka, who was born August 23rd, 1943. So Rodney Alkalka, there's also a Netflix series about him. Anna Kendrick is in it. She did her own little version of his story, and he is a serial killer that killed a bunch of young women. And his past life is one where he either died at a very early age, like in childhood, or he wasn't carried to term. So there's this eagerness displayed in this lifetime when this kind of past life pops up, and it happens sometimes. There's this eagerness in this lifetime to experience all there is to experience life. There's kind of like this rush. A person feels rushed in order to get to where they want to go. They want to experience all of the highs and lows. One of the celeb contracts that I've done that have this past life is Matt LeBlanc. I remember specifically him having it. And this past life also kind of says that the person kind of acts childishly and doesn't pay attention to consequence, which is likely evident in how Rodney Alkalka lived his life. So in regards to his programs, we also see avarice, we also see the binge program, and we also see the secret love program, which is the program that says that they have this respect for the same sex and there may be some attraction to the same sex. He also has a trap program, and I find the trap program very interesting. I'm going to touch on that first out of all of the programs, because the trap program is when it's a mental thing. It's when a person gets so stuck in one mindset that they cannot see the light at the end of the tunnel. They cannot get out of it. They keep, in Rodney's case, I feel like he felt like he couldn't stop committing these murders. He's like, well, I already did it, so I can't stop now. There's no going back now, so I might as well keep acting on it because I'm going to go to jail either way. When I see this trap program manifesting in women's soul contracts, it usually manifests as a mentality, manifests again internally instead of externally, and it manifests as a mentality or some kind of limiting belief that they keep repeating. It causes them to repeat a certain circumstance, maybe an abusive relationship, and they have the hardest time coming out of it. They don't see where the problem is. It's kind of like they're blindsided to it, and they keep repeating it, so they're trapped in their own trap. They could easily step out of it and fix this cycle, but it's very difficult to when you're in it. Rodney Alkalka also has the revenge program. So far, I'm going to summarize a little bit, because this is this is kind of exactly what I thought I would find. I thought that there would be like a couple of programs that when you mix them together, put it into a pot, it's going to be like, oh, okay, this is probably a person that is malicious. So those programs are the revenge program, the avarice program, and there's one other program. There's another program where a person has very, very intense emotions, because the avarice program is a program where the person is extreme. So when something good and bad or bad happens, it's like the very extreme of that good or bad thing. There's one other one, but it's like a recipe for a person that is having a very, very heavy karmic incarnation. A soul contract that I touched on very briefly. I just took a look at it very briefly, and then I was like, this is, again, spot on, is Charles Manson's soul contract. So he was born November 12th, 1934. Also very telling that a lot of these birthdays are November birthdays. I feel like there's something about the shadow side of the number 11 that gives this propensity of people having like double lives or something. So for Charles Manson, we have the trap program, we have the violation of hierarchy program, we have public disgrace program, and the collusion program. So violation of hierarchy, I can tell based on that he's going to have a problem when people are stepping out of line, when people don't listen to authorities, especially if he's in the authority, if he's in the authoritative position. He's going to have a gigantic problem with that. It's going to be a trigger for him, which is probably why he created this cult in the first place. He was looking for a position of power that he can be in, and he's like, what do I do best? I am best at manipulating people. I am best at getting them to side with me, getting them to understand my motives and my view of thinking on the world. So I feel like he channeled that program because of this trigger where he needs to be the person everybody listens to, the person with the last word, stuff like that. When I read his past life, I was like, he is the poster boy for this past life, I think, because it's just impossibly accurate. In his past life, he had exceptional influence and power. So I feel like his soul remembers that he has this influence and power, and he kind of comes into this incarnation, and he's like, everybody's going to listen to me. Everybody's going to just step aside and let me do what I do, and I'll just lead everybody. So it says that he commanded other people, and he was responsible for a lot of different things. He was kind of the person that was moving figures around, maybe a general, I'm getting. He guided a lot of people's decision making and just was a prominent figure that had control over a lot. So how is this manifesting in his present life? The soul remembers this previous experience. So this person carries on teaching everyone how to live correctly, what the correct way is. He's telling everybody that there's a wrong way and there's a right way, and I'm the right way. He controls everybody, and he thinks of himself as being the most responsible, the most important, and the most intelligent. And I'm like, every video I've ever seen of Charles Manson ever, he's not humble. He is not a meek person, I'm going to say. He is definitely very much thinking that he's the most important character out there. So where he could have used this soul contract info is that it predicts that there's going to be this downfall for him in the public eye. I'm pretty sure he has the public disgrace program. Yes, the public disgrace program says that at some point he is going to lose favor with the public. And this doesn't always mean the like the general public, the widespread like society. I feel like the entire country knew what he was doing, what was going on, and it was very publicized. So there was a lot of eyes on him, and he had this fall from grace. When this is popping up on people's charts that aren't widely known, this public disgrace program means it's just going to be in your immediate community, in your immediate like family, acquaintances, kind of relatives and friends group, not the country, like Charles Manson. So it predicts that there's going to be this fall from grace, and that every attempt to control and manipulate will fail. He's not going to be in this position of authority anymore. He's not going to be able to maintain his authority, maintain his following and readership or listenership. Like, it's going to fall apart, and he's going to lose all of that influence. And the more he attempts to keep people in situations under control, the more everything will fall out of hand. There are going to be unforeseen circumstances, as Chart says. His strategy to life, his approach to life, kind of the way that he approaches situations, is one of domination. He has the dominant strategy. So he specifically has a karmic tale that seeks to protect himself and his territory by demonstrating his power and behaving arrogantly towards others. Now we see this manifesting through his disrespect towards people, through pointing out faults of others, criticizing arrogance, showing superiority, tyranny, irresponsibility, and hyper control. So I don't know why. I feel like I had the hardest time finding US American serial killers, like a list of them, of the ones that are more widely known. So the ones that I've brought up here are kind of the ones that I'm familiar with. I've heard their names before. I kind of know their stories. I've watched some of their documentaries, some documentaries on them, I'd rather say. And for some reason, it was after I got all of the names of the people that I wanted to discuss that I found a site with a list of widely known serial killers. So I guess that I needed to talk about the people that I already initially planned on talking about for a reason. Like the Menendez brothers and like the person I'm about to mention now. I'm specifically bringing him up because, again, Netflix, there's a series on him that I'm sorry, I cannot recommend. It was a tough watch, not because of what he did, but because they stretched it out so much. It was needlessly long, and it was glorifying him a lot. It was glorifying him a lot, and it was touching on his football career and a lot of football aspects and coaches and a lot of different football players. And it was just, I can't recommend it, but I did want to look into his chart because I just watched that series. I think I only got to the second episode, and I was like, I can't keep watching this. I don't know how many episodes there are, but both episodes were like 50 minutes, and I'm like, I can't do this. I have like ADHD brain, I swear, because I have the hardest time sitting through stuff like that, stuff that is purposefully, like intentionally drawn out. So Aaron Hernandez was born November 6th, 1989. There is that November again. And there is that 6. That 6 is telling me right off the bat that he is a people pleaser. In the documentary about him, there was one of his teammates actually said that he was the type of person, I forget the term he used for it, but he was the type of person that would jump in front of a bus, like do the most outrageous thing, like jump over a bus, like stand on the railroad, kind of like really extreme things just to get attention So that showcases his like addiction to kind of having like this certain image that he puts on for others and just being a people pleaser. Aaron Hernandez wasn't a serial killer, so his soul contract looks way different. First of all, there's a lot less programs, and I feel like the soul contracts where the person committed a series of murders, there is a lot of programs going on. In his soul contract, he has the Midas Touch, actually, the King Midas Touch program, which essentially means that there's so many pathways open to him for success. And that explains why he got drafted into the NFL. That explains his really successful career in the NFL up until this happened, up until he was being tried for murder. But there's also this dark side to him that we see based on the Hidden Secret program and the Hiding the Truth program, which is, as far as programs go, they're very, very mysterious. They're not concrete at all in regards to what they talk about and what those programs are. They're a lot more interpretable, I would say, up to interpretation compared to the other programs that go very in depth. But essentially, I think the Hidden Secret and the Hiding the Truth program kind of showcases the shadow side that he has and addresses the fact that there was a lot of things that he wasn't disclosing, a lot of sides to him that were not well known, that he was deliberately hiding in order to keep up appearances and keep up this image that he has made for himself. He also has the torture / bullying program, which in the light, when it's operating from the light, it just means this person is more susceptible to bullying. They're more sensitive to it. It cuts them very deeply. But unfortunately, when operating from the shadow side, when this program goes into the negative, the person starts to do the same unto others. They start to bully others and kind of make fun of them. And they may play it off as a joke, but it could still hurt other people's feelings. And maybe they do it on a subconscious level. They feel like, oh, well, I got bullied. Like I got made fun of. Like I got jabs thrown at me all the time. So I'm going to do that too. There was just no introspection and being like, maybe I shouldn't be this way with others. Maybe I shouldn't do the thing that was done to me, the thing that really hurt me, the thing I had to desensitize myself to and do it to others because it might hurt them in the same way that it hurt me. So the Aaron Hernandez, I feel like there was something karmic there that he had to learn and that he just couldn't process. I feel like there was another side to him that he couldn't keep down anymore because everything kind of revealed itself because the truth always comes out, right? But was there I'm not going to say that there was no malicious intent because he actually did kill people. As far as programs go, though, I think that he was just really battling his own inner demons and he lost the fight because he obviously chose to do something as karmic as taking somebody's life. There was one other soul contract I wanted to touch on. I didn't go very in depth into the contract. I just glanced at the programs and I wanted to give you guys a well-rounded look as to what you can expect going into these kind of soul contracts. And I think I specifically wanted to do that in order to showcase that the clients that I get, their soul contracts look so different. So different from these kind of soul contracts. Even though there are certain programs that are basic programs I see all the time, they may have similar ones as these really malicious ones. But the serial killer murder soul contracts look malicious. There's malicious intent. There's this this tendency of putting on a show for everybody else, coming off as something that they are not, and then hiding this really deep and dark persona inside. So the last soul contract I wanted to touch on is John Wayne Gacy's soul contract. He was born March 17th, 1942. And the programs we find in his chart are not synonymous, but there's a lot of them that have been popping up in Ted Bundy's chart, in Edmund Kemper's chart, in Jeffrey Dahmer's chart. There's commonalities. There's definitely commonalities. So for John Wayne Gacy, we see the hostage chart, which is found in Edmund Kemper's. We also see the secret love, which is this possible attraction to the same sex and appreciation for the same sex. It usually comes hand in hand with a distrust of the opposite sex because of some sort of trauma. There's also the hidden secret, which we just saw in Aaron Hernandez's chart. There's excitement, risks, adrenaline. So the excitement, risks, adrenaline, I'm surprised I didn't see that pop up more throughout these charts, but that gives me a little look into the motivation behind John Wayne Gacy's killings, because he got some kind of adrenaline / excitement from it. The excitement, adrenaline one is where a person takes a lot of risks. He usually takes risks that he shouldn't be taking, and he knows it. It's the type of person that takes really, really, really stupid risks with little to no reward. Like, it's good to take a risk when there's a good payout, right? So if there has to be a balance. If you're going to take a gigantic risk, you might as well get a gigantic payout for it. But this program specifically talks about people that take risks when there's either no reward whatsoever or very, very little. So it was interesting that that was in his chart. As far as the rest of his programs, there isn't anything that's intentionally malicious, anything that is super heavy. They're very common programs. So I think what I want to underline before I wrap this episode up specifically is that everybody's soul contract is going to be manifesting in various extremes. So even though you may find these programs in your chart, they are not going to manifest in the same extremes, because everybody is operating from their own wavelength, so to speak, of positive versus negative, of the inner work that we've done. Everybody's operating on a different scale. And so somebody that has done a lot of inner work, they aren't going to be doing the kind of things that these people are doing. They're not going to be acting out in the extremes that these people are doing. So I don't mean to glorify their atrocities, the atrocities that they've committed in any shape or form. This is purely a look into people on the soul level to see what they were supposed to do here, what lessons they were supposed to take away from this, and how that may have kind of backfired a whole lot. Anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning into the Soul Ecosystem. If you wanted to purchase your very own personal soul contract, you can do so by going to annarising.org and finding it on my list of services. If you wanted to do just highlights instead of the full 25 to 30 page document that is the soul contracts, I just put it up on my site. You can click on just the highlights section. It is a much smaller version of the soul contract and gives you just the highlights. Also, please follow me on Anna Rising Official on Instagram and the Soul Ecosystem on Instagram. Thank you all so much. Have a good night and a great weekend.